As human beings, we have a tendency to lean towards gaming out the downside because we can understand the downside, but we don't have the capacity to fully imagine the upside once we start something and we commit to it. You can't write the screenplay of your life before you start. You have to write it as you go, but you can write the screenplay of a bad life.
Welcome to Artificial Happiness, a show about fulfillment in the age of AI. I'm Duncan CJ. In 1994, a 23-year-old living at his mother's house, less than a year out of college, started a company with no experience and no plan. That company became Spin Master. Today, it has 28 offices, more than 3,000 employees, and over $2 billion in annual revenue. It's the fourth largest toy company in the world, behind only Hasbro, Mattel, and Lego. My guest is behind two of the biggest toy franchises on Earth, Bakugan, which outsold Transformers and Star Wars at its peak, and Paw Patrol, which my nephews are huge fans of. So I'm going to get some serious uncle points for this conversation. And Paw Patrol has grossed, I think, over $14 billion, and by his own estimate, reached at least 250 million children worldwide. He argues that youth and inexperience are not obstacles, they're your biggest advantages. That's the subject of his new book, No Experience Necessary: Why Betting on Yourself in Your 20s is the Best Decision You'll Ever Make. Ronnen Harary, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Duncan. Pleasure to be here. So nice to meet you.
Why did you write this book? Like, why now? You're 54, you've got this incredibly successful company. What made you decide that now was the time?
Well, first it was my memory. So I wanted to get some things down before my memory goes. So when you crest over 50, a lot of stuff changes. I'd wanted to have done it for like 10 years because I just had this thought about the power of the 20s and what accrues to you in that decade and how special a decade it is. And I was so lucky to start my journey at the early part of the decade. And there were so many magical things that happened in terms of people rooting for me and people wanting to us to be successful and to help us out. The power of not knowing and sometimes having a bit of naivety with a lot of passion is a good cocktail. And I thought that it was just something that would be nice to share. And also, my mother was extremely supportive, as you said in the introduction. She when my parents split, everything changed. The whole dynamic of my house changed. And my mother was, whatever you want to do, I'm here to support you. And there's no judgment. And so I think that I wanted to write this book as a supportive parent for people to make the case to themselves what they want to do in their life, and especially around business, if you're inclined to start a business, and make the case to yourself and have various different things that you can talk about with your parents or with people close to you in your life to create discussion. Because I think there's a lot of unsaids in families. And I kind of wanted this book to be something that created conversation that helped you make decisions on where you want to go in your life.
Your mum is where it all began. She showed you an article from an Israeli newspaper about a novelty house plant that grows hair. What was that about?
Well, basically, I just graduated university. And if you back up a little bit, Anton and I, my business partner, who was my best friend from when I was like 12 years old at camp, we started this business actually in university called Campus Faces. And so it was this, we would take pictures of kids during Frosh Week and we'd sell advertising around the outside. This is like pre-Facebook, pre-internet. And we give it out to students so they can hang it up on their walls for free. And we basically, at the end of graduation, we had done it at 5 universities. We were grossing about $100,000 a year. We both graduated with no debt, had about $10,000 left in the bank account, paid for school ourselves. And just after we graduated, my mother came to us and she's like, there's this product that's doing well in Israel. And she sat me down, she translated. And in the article, it basically said how these 10 different people were making this product, and they collectively had sold about 300,000 pieces. So it was like 300,000 pieces in a country of about 10 million. I was like, and no one's selling it in North America, how big would it possibly be here? And that was the thesis and the calculus. And I went to Anton, I said to him, what do you think? And he said, no, I think you're crazy. This is never going to work. So it took me about 2 weeks to finally convince him. And finally, when he said yes, he came in full force, and we said, let's make 5,000 pieces for Mother's Day. That was our goal. And I think we decided on 5,000 pieces because that was the minimum run that the printer would do in terms of boxes. And we didn't have any money to hire people. So we got my sister, she designed the packaging. We gave her 5% profit sharing on the sales to Earth Buddies. We got my brother-in-law, who's a super talented engineer, and he designed the machinery to make the Earth Buddies. We hired people. We rented a small little factory, and we made the 5,000 pieces. And our first place that we decided to sell them, we didn't even have any accounts. We had no stores. We just said, let's make the 5,000 pieces, and then we'll figure out where we're going to sell them. So once we made the first 5,000 pieces, we started selling them on the streets of Toronto, and we sold about 700 pieces that weekend. Even my younger sister helped out. My late grandmother was there on the streets. Like, it was a whole family friend affair. Just get anybody who can help. And then we came into the office and we had like 4,300 pieces left. And then we said, okay, well, let's figure out how to sell those. And we had two incredible things happen afterwards. One is we sold 26,000 pieces through a distributor who literally I went to see, and after pitching them the product, they went silent for 2 weeks, and then suddenly they rung us up. They're like, when can you deliver 26,000 pieces? And then another through account in Kmart in the United States, we got an order for 500,000 pieces, which was a whole crazy story. And by the end of that year, we'd manufactured and sold over 1 million pieces in 9 months.
You're in Toronto, you get up super early, 4:30 in the morning, and decide to jump in your car and head down to Detroit, Kmart headquarters. And you meet someone and then you pitch them, but it doesn't quite get a plan, does it?
Correct. Well, basically what happened was the year before, Anton was backpacking Europe, and he met this guy. His name is Aaron Hermelin. And he lived in Detroit, and his family was quite successful. So Anton just called him. And he said, is there any possibility you have any contacts at Kmart? And he said, sure, I can get you a meeting there. And I don't know why I was the one that went down and did the meeting, but I did. And I didn't even think about staying in a hotel. It's like, if I think back now, it's like, it would have been good to like get a good night's sleep. But anyways, I drove there, and I meet Aaron. I meet the rep, and I pitch this buyer for 30 minutes, and he stays silent. He's like such a gentleman. And he says to me, I just want to let you know I'm not the buyer for this product. And I was like, maybe he's not telling me the truth. So I repitched him again. And then he stayed quiet, and he said, I'm not the buyer for this product. And then I said to him, I still didn't believe him. I said, well, we'll give you the product on consigned sales, and if you sell it, you'll pay us. And he said, I don't think you understand. I'm really not the buyer for this product. So I said, well, who is the buyer for this product? I just drove from Toronto. Can you find out for me? And he went to his office, and he came back, and he gave me a piece of paper. I shook his hand, took my box of Earth Buddies, and on the paper it said Adrian Zacks. And I started walking around Kmart Corporation looking, okay, for this woman. And at the time, Kmart was the largest retailer in the world. They're kind of like Amazon today. So basically, I'm walking around the equivalent of Amazon without any permission, looking for this lady. And I got so lucky, Duncan. She was sitting at her desk, and I pitched her for 30 seconds, and she said, "Okay, I'm going to give you a meeting at 3:30." I go downstairs. The guys are like, "What happened?" I was like, "I found the buyer." They're like, Great, let's go for breakfast. Let's go for lunch." I'm like, "I'm not going anywhere. I don't leave the office. I stay in the reception. I wait till 3:30. I go back up." And then the craziest thing happened is I'm walking into her office, and as I walk in, it's a tiny office. She's behind her desk. There's 7 competing products on her shelf. So now I'm like, I'm in the right office for sure. Guaranteed I'm in the right office. But I'm like, guaranteed I have competition. So in my mind, I lowered my price by $1 straight away. And I did the whole pitch, and I told her about the Earth Buddies and how the whole story, similar to how my mother's story with the article, and how we made 5,000 pieces for Mother's Day. And I basically told her everything. I told her even about Campus Faces. I told her everything I've done to date in my life. And she listened quietly. She asked a few questions, and then she basically turned around and she put this big book in front of me, and she said, "This is the vendor book for Kmart. Fill it out. I'm going to order 48,000 pieces from you." Committed on the spot, 48,000 pieces. And if you ship 48,000 pieces and they go well, I'm ordering another 500,000 pieces for this Christmas. And I was like, I was so speechless. Just like, I almost didn't believe her. I think I was slightly paranoid when I was younger. And then I did something strange. She had these like gnomes sitting on her shelf. And I said, "Can I have one of the gnomes?" Because I wanted to have something. A gnome is like what you put in the garden. I wanted to have like a memory of what actually happened that day. But she was such an incredible woman. And I look back and like, I know 100% she gave us the order for two reasons. One is because of my age. She wanted to help young people. And two is I got in the room, right? So the most magical thing was like I got in front of her and she was able to like, you know, feel me and feel my passion and my determination, age aside, actually. And it was incredible. And it just basically just the company just went up like a rocket. It gave everybody so much energy and fuel.
This is a phrase that you repeat to yourself. If you go, you learn. If you go, you get. What does that mean to you?
It means that the magic happens outside the office, in the real world, and you need to travel, and you constantly need to be mixing with people and putting yourself in situations that may be a little bit awkward, even though it didn't feel awkward to me at the time. But you're constantly out there and building relationships and having people feel you and your passion, right? Like I've never done a PowerPoint presentation in my whole life. I actually have a learning disability. So for me to like put my thoughts down into paper is very difficult. So I just use my verbal skills, and I love to be face to face with people. And I think that that's the other thing about youth. People love being around young people. They love the energy. You don't fully appreciate it when you're in 20s, but when you hit middle age, there's just something you're looking at like you're looking at even looking at you now. You're a young guy. What are you, 30 years old? 32,
I
35,
appreciate it. I'm
36, 37?
38.
Okay, you're okay. Well, yeah, you haven't broken 40 yet. Good. But even in the 30s, it's still youthful energy. That much more in your 20s, and people just want to be around you, and they want to feel that energy, and they want to give back to you, right? It's a form of giving back, being around young people. So if you're in front of people, they get that they have that opportunity and they have that experience to feel you, see you, understand you, and people make so many decisions in life, especially around business, around the person. It's really 50% of it's around the person. If you actually meet with venture capitalists, a lot of their decision is based on the people at the end of the day, because they know the kind of the business is going to morph and change, but it's like, can that person get through everything? And I think that she had the opportunity to buy from seven other people, but she made a bet that we were going to be able to, whatever adversity we ran into, we would figure out how to make that 500,000 pieces. And we did. The craziest thing is that actually she ordered 48,000 pieces from us, but we calculated that we'd need to deliver the 500,000 pieces, okay, in November. And there was no way we could actually produce that many pieces if she gave us the order in September. So we actually, yeah, there was just, we calculated, we were producing 17,500 a day. That was our max quantity. So we did the math and we said, if we started in September when we get the physical order, okay, she was only testing 48,000 pieces. So we had to bet that the test was going to go well, and we had to get ahead of it. So we started producing her 500,000 pieces order in July. When we got the purchase order, okay, we were 200,000 pieces in without the piece of paper. There was a point in time, okay, where we got so nervous that I drove to Detroit to physically get the purchase order from her because I got nervous. And it actually came by fax with those old rolling faxes, the roller faxes, and the ones you have to like rip, halfway through my drive to Detroit.
When you originally just like renting some office space and they kicked you out because the air's filled with sawdust. And so it's like, that's the end of your lease 2 days in or whatever it was.
Oh yeah, they were like, if you don't leave, there were cigarette butts in the stairwell, and there was sawdust all over the place. I said, if you don't leave, okay, if you don't stop manufacturing, I don't even know where we got the idea. We literally took a triple A office and we hung plastic tarp in part of the office, and that's where we made the first Earth Buddies. It's like so.
It's great to hear, because a lot of this, I think many people will have a story, assumption in their head why they can't do things. Okay, I'm too young, I'm too inexperienced, I don't have VC backing, I've fill in the blank. And actually this kind of flies in the face of all that. Naivety is a competitive advantage. You talk about this idea of white space. It allows you to see white space opportunities that experts would dismiss as impossible. Can you talk to me about white space? What is that?
White space is basically the ability to see um, opportunities in the marketplace that are not being filled, right? So, like for example, when we did Paw Patrol much later in our career, we did it in our 19th year, but we noticed that there hadn't been a successful preschool show in 10 years. And that led us to feel like s- that that addressable market is not being fulfilled, right? Because there usually was continuously successful shows for preschoolers every like 5 years. So maybe no one was focused on it. And if no one's focused on it, then there's an opportunity to actually fill the space. So it's that type of uh, searching and understanding your marketplace. And for us, we're like definitely students of the toy industry and students of kids entertainment. And to understand the white space, you should be a student in whatever area you're focused on. And then I think it's also there's some stuff that comes to you naturally, and that's being close to the zeitgeist and whatever the zeitgeist is at that moment in time. And I personally believe that when you're in your 20s, you're practically you are the zeitgeist, and and you're actually creating it without even knowing it, and you're part of it without even knowing it, and it gives you a huge advantage. And the craziest thing is like when you grow up, you're constantly observing the world, right? You're living at home for the most part. You're in school. You're observing. You're observing and you're intaking information all the time. And then if you're fortunate enough, you go to university or college or another school. But when you get into your early 20s, it's the first time that you have the ability to have agency in your life to put something out into the world rather than take something in. And your ability now to share something is is coming from a place of observation and freshness and being in the zeitgeist and the freshness with the white space, and you're seeing the world totally differently. And so you can offer up a new way of doing many things, right? Whether or not it's music, whether or not it's arts, whether or not you want to open up a restaurant, whether or not you want to do a different type of service business, whether or not you want to, live your life in Sri Lanka. Like there's different ways to see the world and live the world as a result of being fresh into the world. But then on the flip side, people say, well, you don't have the experience to match it, but you have your own, but you've just been observing the world for the last 20 plus years, and you have an opinion. So why dampen it down because of the lack of experience? And I also firmly believe that you, you, if you have these inspirations, then you'll learn by doing at the end of the day. And it's not going to be a linear path, but the fact that you're not intellectualizing it anymore gives you an incredible ability to go up this learning curve at a very fast pace.
How do you not lose that? So when we get into our 30s, 40s, 50s, how have you in Spin Master managed to keep that beginner's mindset, trying stuff, test? How do you not lose that and become just some rigid incumbent? Like I said, you got 3,000 employees, offices all around the world. How are you thinking about that youthful energy, taking chances today?
So to me, it's all in the curiosity. It's the curiosity to learn and to grow and to actually want to try different things. I think we have a natural thing at Spin Master. We constantly want to make history and we want to put things out into the world, and we're just constantly looking to innovate. And so I think it just comes down to your it's like a birthing gene. I don't know. We just constantly want to have kids. it's but I think it's linked to the curiosity. We're really curious ourselves. Like for example, we're building out our AI capabilities now, and so it's just so curious about like what are these new tools and how can we tell stories differently to kids, right? In really meaningful ways, and how can kids interact with our characters now in ways that they can never interact before? So it's constantly looking at what's new and applying it to the space that we're in. Um, and like we'd never produced a movie before, and we were able to do that in 2021. I think it's just like I think every time you grow your business and you meet yourself where you're at, you want to challenge yourself because it gets boring. That's the thing. It just gets if the business just stays the same, it just gets really, really boring. So it's a combination of curiosity and not wanting to be bored at the same time and wanting to challenge yourself.
One of the key themes from the book is this concept of the inverse risk. If risk is the downside of taking action, the inverse risk is what you lose by not taking action, the potential upside that will never materialize if you play it safe. How do you think about this concept of inverse risk, and why did you dedicate so much space to speaking about that?
As human beings, we have a tendency to lean towards gaming out the downside because we can understand the downside, but we don't have the capacity to fully imagine the upside once we start something and we commit to it. And that's why I'm passionate about it, because once you start, you unlock all these magical things. So, when we started our business, we said to ourselves, we are going to be open to ideas from wherever they come from in the world. We're going to grow the business as big as we possibly can, and we're going to stay in the kids space. And we defined it very broadly. We didn't box ourselves in at any point in time, but we were 100% committed um, to going on this journey. And the universe met us halfway in terms of the efforts that we put in. And so many magical things happened. Like, I would have never dreamed that the Earth Buddy, it would have led to Devil Sticks, and Devil Sticks would have led to the Air Hogs, and that we would have met these two inventors, British inventors. From, are you English? You're English, right?
I'm English, yeah. London.
Let me tell you, the English are super talented. They're incredible. The creator of Paw Patrol is English, Keith Chapman. Yeah, you guys are great storytellers and great toy guys. And so our first big product was Air Hogs, which came from Peter Manning and John Dixon, two British inventors. And when we started with Earth Buddies, I would have never imagined 4 years later we're making air parachute planes and they're selling all around the world. And so you can't write the screenplay of your life before you start. That's the thing, right? You have to write it as you go. But you can write the screenplay of a bad life, like the business closes, or I go bankrupt, God forbid, or it doesn't work, or what are people going to think of me, or I'm going to be a failure. Like, you can write that stuff, but the other stuff that's not predictable, you don't know what's going to happen until you start. If you don't give yourself the ability to try, then you can't bring things out into the world at the end of the day. It becomes much more of an intellectual pursuit. And so the inverse risk, giving you the ability to let the upside play out as you go, gives you much more flexibility and latitude to take the endeavor. And it's at the end of the day, it's really rooted in courage and faith. Those are the two key elements.
To not have the whole staircase visible, but just to trust that that next step will unfold, and the next step, and then the next step, and then the dots will connect if you just keep on showing up and like playing the game.
Correct. Correct. Playing the game. It's funny you say that, because my business partner Ben says, never bet the farm and always stay in the game, because if you stay in the game, magical things are going to happen, and you just have to have patience.
Tell me about the no still water rule, and also the clear the air within 24 hours. There were some beautiful ideas which I think we could learn a lot from.
Well, no still water is basically, in the toy industry, you have a lot of products that don't do well, and they're basically failures. And we basically had a string of, in the early years, we had a string of 3 bad products. We had Don't Free Freddy. Okay. And I'll never forget this. Okay. When we did the commercial for Don't Free Freddy, I saw the kid's look on his face when he watched the commercial, and he just had this like blank stare. And I knew we hadn't shipped the product yet. And I knew that product was going to be unsuccessful just from his reaction. Then we had Tickle Secrets Baby. Was this whole idea that you tickle a baby in multiple spots and she comes alive. Like, just thinking about it now, I don't know what we were thinking back in the day. And Little Charmers, these small dolls. All 3 of them did really badly. And what we do is we just closed out the product, marked it down, and cleared it out, and just went on to the next product. Now, we took all the learnings, which was fantastic, but we just moved fast, and that's the still water. Like, you don't get married to any of your products that are not successful, right? Even though you put in 2 years worth of work, you just don't get married to them. And then on top of that, which is about the partnerships, is like we never attribute blame to anybody because it's a creative process and there's multiple people that are involved. And so even the person that really advocated for it, you can't attribute the blame to that individual because so many people were part of the execution and bring to market of the product. And the same time, when we're successful, no one owns it, right? So some of our biggest successes, you will never hear at Spin Master, like I attribute, the success of Bakugan to this individual or to that individual. Everybody knows that it is a collaboration of a lot of people. And we actually do something very strange at Spin Master. We never actually look back and actually do like a post analysis on why the product failed. So this is also part of the still water because everybody knows the score at the end of the day. They know who did what and who played what part, but there's no purpose in it, right? And everybody's smart enough to know why it wasn't successful. So let's just move forward and let's spend the energy on the next product and what we're going to bring to market. Or for anybody else, listening, it's whatever your next endeavor is going to be. So always keep things moving. Never get married to anything, because if you start getting doubt in your mind why things happen, I think doubt is the anti-luck, right? And you lose momentum, and everything in business is around momentum. What was the other thing you said? It was about
Clear the air within 24 hours.
clear the air. Yeah. So that was a big thing, is saying sorry in our partnership, right? Your ability to apologize on the spot when you've wronged the other person or you've done something. And the sorry is the critical word to clear the air, because it's the other person. It's the lowering of the ego to be able to recognize where you were wrong and apologize and take ownership for it. And that's all a person really wants at the end of the day. The person just wants an acknowledgement of being slighted or being wronged at that moment in time. And then you can move forward. But if you don't clear the air, things fester. And even a 5% issue can turn into a 10, 15, 20, 30, and then it just hangs out there, right? So you want to shut the door on the issue straight away. Because also the other thing about business is that you have to, it's fierce out there. It's very competitive, whatever you're doing, right? So you need all your energy to be placed in the right area. And so if it's being diffused because of conflict, then you're only running at 70% when you need to run that 120.
If a product bombs, you've spent 2 years working on it, invested a huge amount of time, money, resources, mark down the price, sell off the inventory, move on. That is sounds wonderful in theory, but how? With the egos involved, but then I think you kind of answered it. The idea that the fact that you win together, you lose together. I think a part of the reason why we might hold on to a bad bet is because as an individual, I've invested so much of myself, my identity, my success in making this work, that even when the market is giving me feedback that this is a bomb, maybe I'll hold on to it for too long. But the fact that you, as a company, we win together, we lose together, I guess that I'm guessing that allows us to hold on to it looser. It's less of our identity in any one product, which allows us to move quicker.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. But it's also, just hearing you speak, it's also in the notion of, it's not just about the one product, right? We were building a business as big as we possibly could. And it's more about the business itself than necessarily the one specific product itself.
Sure.
So we're kind of devoid from making that everything. And I would say that to other people, give yourself the ability to be wrong, because there's no way to be 100% right. Like in our business, if you bat 600, you're doing amazing, right? Right. So, and I'd also say other things is that some of the best things in our business have come out of our failures. And so you have to recognize that as long as you're enjoying what you're doing and you're failing, you're doing well. If you're not enjoying what you failed at, then just get out of it. But if you enjoyed it, like we enjoyed producing all those products, right? And some of our failures brought us to some of our biggest successes. So you don't know what's going to come after the failure. That's basically what I'm saying. So you might as well move on.
So the core idea is stagnant water is a lot more dangerous to the health long term of the company than any ebbs and flows of like, okay, this bombed, that's it was a success. So the idea of allowing stagnant water, both in terms of product, both in terms of inventory, both in terms of bad vibes, bad blood, blame, that's toxic for the health, the DNA of the company. So your job as the CEO, the conductor, and also just creating a culture where we don't allow water to become stagnant, because that's much more of a threat than any product bomb ever could be.
Very well said.
The banana boy incident.
Oh, Duncan, you've read the whole book. It's incredible. Uh, in the early 2000s, I started to go to Japan because Japan is one of the most creative places on the planet, and for toys, it's like a mecca. And so I started going there early, and back to our comments about if you don't go, you don't get. Like I probably done about 6 or 7 trips or 8 trips to Japan, just going to toy fairs, making contacts, relationships, stuff like that. And we hadn't done a stitch of business yet. And in 2003, we had our first opportunity with this product called Aquadoodle. And it's basically this large mat, and it comes with this pen that you fill up with water, and you draw on the mat, and the image appears. And then after 3 minutes, it disappears. So it's beautiful for preschoolers. If you're a parent, there's like no fuss, no muss in your house. And the images are incredible, and you just roll up the mat. And so it was developed by Pilot Corporation, which has a toy division. And Pilot's like this 100-year-old pen company in Japan. And so David Fuhrer introduced us to Abe-san, who was the president of Pilot. And we all go for dinner, which is customary before the business meeting. So in Japan, you always do a business meeting, business dinner, and then the next day you do the meeting. So we go for dinner, and we do like hot pot, and everything's great, and it's an incredible relationship. And I'm like feeling very comfortable. So the next day, we the meeting's at like 9:30, and I didn't know this back then, but in Japan, you're not supposed to eat in a meeting unless they put out food on the table. So it's about 9:30 in the morning, and I'd come from Toronto, and the jet lag from Toronto is just like killer. It's the worst. So it's 9:30 in the morning, and the meeting's going, and my blood sugar just like drops, and I'm so hungry. And I turned to my colleague Matt. I'm like, Matt, I'm so hungry, and he's like, oh, don't worry about it. You brought a banana from the hotel. And without even thinking, I literally put my hand down, grab the banana, and I start peeling it. And I'm just looking at the banana. And then next thing I hear, Dave Fuhrer, who's the guy who got us the meeting, he's wearing the suit. He basically says, put the banana away. And I'm like looking at the banana. I'm like, it's a banana. It's already peeled. Like, you can't put a banana away. Like, how do you put a banana away? It's peeled. And then my business partner, Ben, okay, who's got no filter, I love him, okay, he's like, what the fuck are you doing in the middle of a meeting? And then Dave's like, put the banana away. And Ben's swearing that Dave's telling me to put the banana away, but it's a banana and I'm hungry. So I just ate the banana. It's the easiest way to get rid of the banana was to eat it. So I just ate it. And then suddenly the craziest thing, this guy runs, it was a huge boardroom table. Guy runs all the way around with a garbage can. He starts shaking it like this for me to put the peel inside. Put the peel inside. He runs out of the office, okay, the boardroom. The meeting continues. No one says anything, okay? And I didn't know till after the meeting that Abe-san, who was the exact same age as my father, he basically, his face just dropped. Okay, he was like mortified, like he'd never seen anything like this before. I don't think anybody in the whole history of Japan has ever eaten a banana in a meeting. Okay, ever. But the greatest thing was Abe-san loved the story, and we got the business. and then next time he came to Japan, everybody called me Banana Boy. That's my nickname in Japan. And he loves telling the story. Like, he just gets so much out of telling that story. He actually just passed away, unfortunately. But such a special guy, special human.
Talk to me about risk. The single greatest benefit of confronting risk is developing the ability to confront risk. Once you get the stomach for facing it and the muscle memory for dealing with it, you'll be able to handle risk like a pro.
I think it's a bit of a learned skill that needs the repetition, as you said. And you grow up with it, like I did in my household, and I had a lot of uncertainty in terms of my parents and their stability around work. And so for me, it was riskier not to have control of my life and to have control of my destiny, than to put it into other people's hands. And so I think first it starts with a deep desire for wanting to control. Sometimes it comes from an unhealthy place, but it's more rooted in it's riskier to put your life into other people's hands versus dictating your life yourself. And so I think that's the core aspect of it. And so I think it's having that understanding, So for me, it was also like I grew up with a learning disability. I got identified at 10 years old, so I was constantly an outlier in school. And again, not wanting to be an outlier uh, taught me it's riskier not to uh, take my life into my own hands, stuff like that. So it's a deep thing, but I think that if you don't come from have those things growing up and you're in a more comfortable place, I think that again I'll get a bit more esoteric, but I think it's not even a matter of risk. It's more about what's the life that you want to live, right? And having the confidence to go and live that life as best as you possibly can versus living a life that society wants you to live or potentially your parents want you to live and staying true to yourself. And I think that it's riskier not to do that, to be true to yourself, because if you're not true to yourself, then it's going to show up in two places. One, it'll show up in your body, and two, it will just show up in your energy levels. And so it's actually riskier to not try what you're naturally inclined to go towards, whatever that is in your life. And we all have different definitions of success, and we all have different definitions of what we want to do and how we want to live and be in this world. And it's your life to live, and only you know that at the end of the day. And it's for you to make those decisions. And I think the risk is actually the highest form of agency that you can have in your life. It's your opportunity to practice agency in your life over and over and over again. You may not get the results that you're looking for, but it's your ability to practice your agency and have agency. It's actually it's actually the most wonderful thing because the universe giving you opportunities to try, right? And develop that muscle, right? And why would you not take it? Especially when stuff comes your way, right? I have one last thing to say, and I picked it up from my time in India. I think it was in my I did my yoga teacher training last year. It was the most wonderful 4 weeks of my life, and it was all around resistance. And I think when we think about risk, we get resistance, but sometimes resistance is a healthy thing. It's sending you a message. It's telling you, yeah, it's something you want to go towards, and on the other side of resistance is freedom. And so on the other side of risk is freedom, because then you know you've taken that risk. It may not work out, but then you know at the end of the day what happened versus having the intellectual like, okay, well, it could this that like. I think we all live in our heads way too much.
You said you had like a learning disability, and it's your hand was often not able to keep up with the speed of your thinking. Is that correct? And so
Correct.
like it,
Correct.
and so at the time, when were you able to look back? And 'cause I know you now think of it as like your learning gift, but at the time, as you're experiencing it as a kid, it's a different experience. You're feeling shame, embarrassment, like you can't keep up. Friends are doing projects, getting them done, then going down to the bar. Hours and hours and hours later, you are just putting in time on task, not to like advance or get ahead, but just to keep your head above water, just to try and do the same amount as your friends had already completed hours earlier. So, one, can you just tell me about that, and then maybe when did you actually have the space, the distance, or the hindsight to realize that actually this has been a gift?
Yeah, the gift part didn't come till like much later on, probably till like 40, 45. I
Mm.
was able to look back. But growing up, it was so difficult. I think you describe it really well. It's like basically trying to keep my head above water. It was just like treading water, you know. It's like and I was so lucky to get identified and get these accommodations because I for sure I would have dropped out of school and would have been living a totally different life. And I feel for people that don't get identified today, and it's so expensive to get identified. And I got so lucky I was in a public school. And one of the fastest tracks to go into to prison is actually people with learning disabilities that don't get identified because you can't keep up and you drop out. And when you drop out and you're in your teens, you know, like things happen. You hang out with different type of people. But it was brutal for me. It's a constant reminder of how difficult it is for you to um, express yourself and learn. And so and I'm just saying in terms of being in a public school system where it's not built for you because we intake information differently and we outtake the information differently. And it's not a sign of lack of intelligence, which no one told me growing up. Um, it's just a way that your brain processes information, but it's very difficult to do it in the public school system. You really need to be in private school or you need to get extra not even accommodations. You don't even want the accommodation. What you want is you actually want to learn the way your brain intakes information. But so it's a whole other thing. But it basically it caused me to learn how to be a grinder
Mm.
and and to keep on pushing and to keep on trying and never to give up. And I think that never give up repetition gave me the ability to take risk because I really had no other choice, right? Because life was not smooth for me at the end of the day from a learning perspective. Then I finally, when I graduated, and it's one of the reasons why I started a business, is that I got to express myself in my way and do things my way. And having a business is one of the greatest things because you can control the type of people, the environment, how you work, how you treat people, how you treat your partners. If you give equity away, how you share profits, all these sorts of things, how you show up. The way I do a meeting, I'll start a meeting with two people and I'll have like by the time the hour is done, 10 people in my office and we're riffing and we're jamming. It's kind of like, it's creating art. It's like a symphony. And I'll run late. Okay. I'm okay to run late. I'm not one of those people that ends on time. Okay. Because if you're peaking and the ideas are forming, right, you want to keep on going. Like that's where the gold is. You just got to the gold. So it's like, you can't just continue. You can't just like end when you got to the gold. But that's for me. Right. And all my partners and everybody put up with it. Right. Because it worked and it generated results. But that was because that was how I like to work. Right. And so I was able to do things completely differently once I had my own business because I literally created my own world versus being in this world where I was confined to school and also other jobs where I was selling fertilizer and telemarketing, selling cable and all these jobs that were very like rigid. Can I tell you, I applied for a bunch of jobs in high school and I didn't get the job because my handwriting was so poor they couldn't read my application. I couldn't get jobs where I wanted to go. Canadian Tire, I tried for jobs. Sporting Life in Toronto, I couldn't fill out the applications. It's terrible. No, I'm thinking I never talked about it before. Actually, this is the first podcast I've shared it on, but I missed out on jobs because I couldn't even write. So to me, it was like having my own place to create my environment, and I think it's just so applicable to so many people in so many areas. And I to me, it was just forced upon me the learning disability and I got freedom once I graduated from university. And I was just like, I was chomping at the bit for the freedom, chomping. Just I couldn't wait.
I'm often reminded about how powerful words are and the way we describe things. And even like when people hear the word meeting, many people have a different story of what that means. And some people that's going to be quite a constrictive thing. But you don't even use the word meeting; you prefer the term gathering, and that has
Correct.
that word gathering is a totally different feeling. Like you gather with kindred spirits, or at a festival, or with like around the fire, and it's got much more of just a different feeling. Just the word before the meeting or gathering has even started, even the way I'm turning up to it has a different energy, a different feeling.
Totally. Totally. I love the word gathering and yeah, it's like, and I love diversity of thought. Like that's why I call different people in at different times, because I just have an intuitive sense that someone can contribute something that would not normally be heard before, and that they wouldn't be in a typical meeting, they wouldn't be included. But you're missing this diverse thought, and the diverse thought sparks an idea in someone else, and then sparks an idea in someone else, and then someone else, and then that's when it forms. I think of myself as just the conductor, and I'm just putting the people in the room together to gather and to pull out the best ideas. And I have a whole theory around introverts, right? In meetings, the people that talk the most are the extroverts. The people that talk the least are the introverts. And the introverts have the most interesting things to say, in my opinion. And so you're constantly like pulling them out and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's all about getting the energy high. You want anytime people are getting together, you want it to be high. And people don't even like the word meeting. They like shun away from it. They just don't even want to go. But it's so cool when you're a group of people together and just just sharing ideas.
These themes came through a bunch in the book. Like we use the word conductor, we've used the word create. It's an artistic endeavor, creativity in motion, business is creativity in motion. It's an expression of what you care about. I feel like these are all different kind of themes of this idea of business as this creative endeavor. It's a piece of art. It's a different way to think about it.
People don't think about business as an art form, but in my opinion, it really is. It's just that the medium is people and it's brains. And your job, if you're the CEO of a company, or if it's your business, is to bring the people together to create the art at the end of the day. But everything in business is it's an expression. You're putting up products or services or restaurants or experiences. Um, it is an artistic pursuit at the end of the day. But people look at it because of profit and losses. So they're like, they don't equate it the same way as creating a painting. But it's the highest form of expression because it's your expression, right? You're just doing it in a different way. So it's your masterpiece to paint at the end of the day, just with humans.
Paw Patrol is a show built on themes of teamwork, community service, compassion, where each pup uses a unique skills to help each other. And based on your estimation, I mentioned it in the intro, but your best guess is it's probably reached between 250 to 300 million kids globally with these positive values. How does that feel?
It's such a wonderful thing because I get constant reminders all the time. I love walking through the airports, and whenever I see a kid with a Paw Patrol or watching a Paw Patrol on the iPad, I get a lot of pleasure. Sometimes I'm like, I have to tell parents in advance, as I approach. But no, it's one of the most gratifying. Almost pinch yourself. You kind of don't believe it's true that you've been so lucky to be able to be a part of people's lives, and in a very intimate way, right? Both for the kids and for the parents, right? There's more parents out there have watched more episodes of Paw Patrol than I have, but we've been invited to their lives and into their homes and into their bedrooms, into the toys they play with, into the clothes they wear, and how they spend their time and their time with their parents. So it's a very uh, humbling. It's very humbling, actually, if you think about it from that perspective.
Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to touch on, or anything that you want to leave our audience with?
I think we've talked about momentum today, and we talked about risk. I think that when you lean into betting on yourself, you generate your own form of luck. And I think that once you start, going back to like, if you don't go, you don't get. Like if you go to Japan 6 times, right, you'll eventually, the universe will meet you halfway and you'll get lucky. And then the uber lucky people are the ones that actually see the opportunity and capitalize on the opportunity when it presents itself. It's a self-perpetuating flywheel that is actually in your control versus chance, which is just something that happens to me. But if you keep the momentum going, you don't bet the farm, you will constantly generate your own form of luck that's self-perpetuating.
Good luck with the launch of the book.
Thank you, Duncan.
And I'm sure it's going to be a huge success. And thank you for this conversation.
Thanks, Duncan.